Hey everybody, this is Paul Krause in Kyoto again. I've got my brand new Fujifilm X100V camera. I just got it the other day. And I also still have my X100T. I got to send this off in a couple of days as part of the trade-in for this. Today I'm going to go out and take a bunch of pictures with both cameras, set up basically the same way, basically the default settings on JPEGs, got +1 sharpness, and we'll just compare the pictures coming out of the cameras, and then I'll get a general idea what the difference of the pictures and the usage of the cameras are. Okay, and then we'll look at them later back at the house. By the way, the pictures from today are not going to be particularly any great works of art. I've got the cameras both set to do just about the same thing. I'm shooting it either at program mode or at f2 because actually that's a lot how I shoot these cameras. One of the reasons I'm shooting at program is I want to see how the camera responds, and I'm not really changing the exposure compensation. I just want to see what pictures come straight out of the camera. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the conclusions I've come to from shooting the cameras for over a space of about 3 days. So the pictures on the left will always be the X100T, and the pictures on the right will always be the X100V. I'll call the T the old camera and the V the new camera. As we look at these pictures and as we go through this, one of the biggest things I noticed right off the bat was the exposures and the colors were different. As you can see with the picture on the left, the exposure is brighter and it's also warmer, meaning there's more yellow in the pictures. Let's zoom in. Now, as we go through this, these are quite subtle but definite differences in the straight out of the candor JPEGs with Provia simulation. Again, the picture on the left is brighter. You can see it particularly here in these gray areas. This is more yellow and this is more blue, and it's quite darker here in this part of the picture. Now, one of the things with the X100T camera is oftentimes I had the exposure compensation set to -0.7, so 2/3 of a stop under. So the new camera's exposures are probably more accurate. Again, the picture on the left is a bit brighter and warmer. Here's an example of the controls on a garbage truck. Looking at these two pictures, I think that the new camera handled the colors better. Now, this is a tricky situation. This color, this orange color, is called vermilion, and there are a lot of religious buildings, both temples and shrines in Japan, that are painted with this color. It's very tricky with the white balance in my cameras. Here, this gold, I think, looks better on the older camera than the newer camera. Both lenses are very sharp. Now, this is a box with a fire extinguisher on it, and that corrugated metal is brown, and this has been faded in the sun. Just to point out that colors just simply look different. So which one is better? That's very subjective, but it's important for me to know that the camera responds differently than the cameras that I used previously, and then I have to adapt my shooting technique based upon it. There's also a very big difference between the two cameras' lenses. The older lens at f2 up close is not sharp, and you can see it here. This is just the calculator on my desk, and there's a haziness to the pictures at f2 and especially up close. Now here it's in focus. You can see that it's in focus, and the focus here is more right here, but you can see how hazy this is in the old camera than with the new camera. But if we close down to f4, this is what happens. The old lens is sharp now at f4, and the new lens is sharper at f4, okay? And this is what the whole picture looks like. So there's a big difference. The T lens is actually quite good except for this up close at f2. When you stop it down, it's a very sharp lens. Let's look at another example here of these flowers. This is at f2. As we can see at 100%, the new lens is definitely sharper than the old lens at f2. And this is some full-on pixel peeping at 200%. Again, we have a lot of clarity here, and you can see this sort of haziness with the old lens. But at f4, both lenses are quite sharp, although the newer lens is sharper at this close range. Here are two pictures at f2 of a statue. If you look here, the focus was on the near eye. It's definitely sharper in the newer lens. But as we go to f4, it sharpens up with both cameras, but the newer lens is better. But if we zoom out, the images both look pretty good. Now here's an example a little less far away. They look quite similar. And if we zoom in, old camera and the new camera look pretty good, especially if you look here. This is pretty sharp and this is pretty sharp. See a little bit of the haziness here, but by and large, both of the pictures look good. So keep in mind it's f2 up close with the old lens doesn't look very good. Now let's talk about another problem with the older camera's lenses, and that's a lens flare. If you look here on the left, you can see on the right hand side of this image that we're getting a lens flare that drops the contrast on this edge of the frame, but it's not over here on the newer lens. Very clearly you can see it. Again, a very strong flare. Both of these situations are somewhat backlit. It's not on the new lens. Now here, this picture shows the differences in the exposures and the flaring. Now, the framing is not exactly the same, and so in a high contrast situation like this, the camera meter can make a big difference just by moving the camera a little bit. But what we're looking at here is there's flaring. You can see it quite clearly. So this is actually probably one of the worst aspects of this lens, I think, is this flaring, because it pops up, not a lot, but in many situations, particularly on a day, this kind of lighting. And you can see it again here on the right-hand side of this image. One thing I want to point out here, though, is many times the images look basically the same. There's a little bit of a color difference and a little bit of the white balance difference. These can be, you can tweak your camera or you can tweak things in post-processing, but basically old camera and the new camera, the pictures are almost indistinguishable. High contrast scene, for all intents and purposes, the images look the same. So I want you to keep that in mind about these cameras, is they're in many ways quite similar. So don't take the negative points so seriously. It's good to know what the weaknesses are, but basically these cameras are going to give you pretty much the same image quality, except for the wide open up close and the flaring issue with the lens in certain circumstances. Personally, for me, I really like the colors that come out of the old camera and also my XT1. But if anybody knows a specific recipe to make an XT3 or X100V look like those older generation cameras, hey, please write something in the comments below. That'd be really helpful to me. I wanted to share with you a few images I've taken in the last couple of days with my new camera, the X100V. This is at a place called Nanzenji Temple in Kyoto, and this is, I think, a spectacular shot. This is a picture straight out of the camera. JPEG. I had to actually wait quite a long time and be patient. That late evening light, I was excited when I got this shot. Here's another picture of cherry blossoms looking up through the sun at f2. And here's a couple of women taking a rest while looking at the beautiful cherry blossoms. These are straight out of camera pictures. I didn't mess with them. Taking these kind of pictures with having that single lens that isn't interchangeable can be a little bit frustrating at times, but it forced me to be patient and it forced me to really search for a picture that isn't just the same old thing. Before I finish this video, I also want to point out here are some older pictures I took with the X100T. Whilst we delved into some pixel peeping, I want to point out that that is actually a really good camera, and I really like the images that come out of this camera, especially the colors, and the lens is sharp. I mean, look at this picture. I think it's a really wonderful picture of this woman. So don't get too affected by the pixel peeping and the negatives of this camera. I've taken a lot of really wonderful pictures with it. Keep that in mind. Sometimes it's really easy to get too caught up with what the problems are for a certain kind of camera or lens or whatever, other than the fact that the size of this camera makes it so that I'll take it out with me, and therefore I get great pictures and people are not too stressed out by it. Okay, great colors. So if this was helpful for you, please click like or subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, please write them in the comments below. Thank you very much for your time. See ya. Bye.